This is so heavy.
We're Tony and Chelsea Northrup, and this is our biggest wildlife lens comparison ever. We have 10 lenses, every lens for Canon, Nikon, and Sony, priced under $2,000. Mosquitoes? So bad out here.
Oh my gosh, it's not good.
We're gonna rank them in order from 10th place to first place, along with specific recommendations for your camera. Hold on one second. I want to thank our sponsor, KEH. If you see one of these lenses and they look good to you, head over to KEH first and see if they have it for sale. Use our coupon code and get 5% off. It comes with a 21-day return policy and a 180-day warranty. If one of these lenses inspires you to upgrade, don't worry. KEH will buy your old gear, turn it into cash, and find a new home for it. Now, on to 10th place.
This is the Sigma 150-600 Sport, and it's $1,850, making it the second most expensive lens in this review. Now, it is durable, but along with its durability comes the fact that it's very, very heavy. The autofocus is slow, and it's not as sharp as the 150-600 Sigma contemporary version of this lens. You can still get good wildlife pictures with this lens, but it's number 10 on our list. It's one of the most expensive, and it's not the sharpest.
In 9th place is the Tamron 150-600 G1. It's the one with this little angle here. It's incredibly inexpensive, and that's a great way to get started in wildlife photography. And it's extremely versatile with a nice zoom, and it's available for Canon and Nikon DSLRs, so you can attach it to just about anything. But it has some serious drawbacks. The image quality was basically the worst in the group, especially at 600 millimeters, especially cropped. But for a real wildlife photographer, you know you can overcome that by just getting very close to your subject. It's just that tends to be really challenging. The autofocus is sometimes painfully slow, especially if you have a flying bird that gets closer to you. It just won't keep up, and so everything will be focused a little bit behind the subject. A couple of tips for getting the most out of it: use those focus limiters whenever you can so it doesn't have to hunt all the way in and out, and you'll get better image quality if you can shut the aperture down to f8. That sounds like a really upset osprey in the background.
Coming in at number 8 is the Canon 600mm f11 lens. It's $700 new, and there's some great advantages to this lens. It's very lightweight, so it's easy to walk around with. It's compact when you're not using it, so it travels easily. It's also very sharp. It's got great autofocus and good stabilization. The drawbacks to this lens is that it's not as sharp as the 800mm f11 once you crop it and get them at the same focal length. Another drawback is that it only connects to the Canon RF cameras, and it only works really well on the Canon R5 and R6, and those are both expensive. It's not that it's bad, it's just that Canon also makes the 800mm f11, and I think it's sharper and it works better. So still a good lens, but there are better options. Number 7 is the Canon 400mm f5.6. This lens was made in 1993, but the reason that it's on our list is because it's still sharper than a lot of the other lenses on this list, even when you crop it to 600 or 800 millimeters. It really withstood the test of time. It's light, it's compact, it's easy to travel with, it's sharp. Some drawbacks to this lens is that it's the only one on the list that is not stabilized. The autofocus is pretty slow. It's also discontinued, but you might be able to find one used on KEH. Here's some tips for this one. You can use a teleconverter and get way closer to your subject. If you're shooting with a Canon RF camera, you're gonna wanna get the 800 f11 instead, but if you're shooting with a Canon DSLR, this is a great option. It's a good, light, compact, easy to travel with camera lens. If your subject is close up, the focusing won't be as good. So if you're shooting a small subject close up, you might want to bring some extension tubes.
By the way, now that you have the gear, it's time to develop your skills a little bit. Check out this video on wildlife tips, and of course, check out Stunning Digital Photography, which has taught hundreds of thousands of people how to get the very best wildlife photos. The ebook, under 10 bucks. In 6th place, the Tamron 150-600 G2. This is the successor to that other Tamron, and they made a lot of improvements. At $1,200, it's also more expensive, but in my opinion, it's worth it. It is so much sharper. The focusing, while still slower than the native lenses, is quite a bit faster. The stabilization is good on it, but it does have some drawbacks. The chromatic aberration when shooting backlit subjects such as any flying bird against a bright sky is terrible. You'll see this sort of awful fringing. You can edit it out, but you're gonna have to put a lot of time into that. If you're working up close, for example, photographing small birds, it's one of the best lenses we've reviewed with very good close-up magnification and limited focus breathing. At 600 millimeters, it shrinks to about 450 millimeters, which isn't as bad as some of the lenses we'll talk about later. Now we're to the recommended part of our list. All the lenses from this point forward we recommend for specific types of shooters, including number 5 here, the brand new Tamron 150 to 500. You can think of it like a third generation of their 150 to 600, but they made it a little bit shorter at 500 millimeters and a little bit more compact. They also made it mirrorless only, and for now, it's only for the Sony E-mount cameras. But finally, Sony shooters have a really great, inexpensive wildlife lens, and it's wonderful. The autofocus is actually amazing, especially on the higher end bodies like the Sony Alpha 1. The lower end bodies, you're going to be limited mostly by the camera body's autofocus, so that will kind of vary. But we got absolutely great results with it. It wasn't as sharp as some of the other lenses, including the Tamron 150 to 600 G2, when you zoom in all the way and when you have to crop. That's because it's only 500 millimeters, and that extra 100 millimeters of range actually makes a pretty big difference in wildlife photography where you're frequently zoomed in all of the way. While the autofocus was great, with really fast moving subjects coming straight at the camera, it sometimes couldn't keep up, especially compared to the Sony 200 to 600, which is a little bit higher up on the list. With backlit subjects, I also had serious problems with chromatic aberration. So if you're shooting a lot of flying birds, keep that in mind. So if you are a Sony shooter and you want something light that you could hike with and travel with, this is absolutely the lens to get. But if you're looking for the sharpest possible results, just hold on 1 second. Fourth place is actually number 1 for all you Canon DSLR shooters. This is an amazing lens, the Sigma 150 to 600 f5 to 6.3. This is the Sigma contemporary lens. Earlier we talked about the sport lens, and that's big and heavy. And though they're similar optically, we got better results from this copy of it. At only $900, small size, lightweight, it is a powerful wildlife lens, especially for you beginners out there, but that doesn't need to hold you back. We got incredibly sharp results consistently. It is simply an all-around great performer. So head over to KEH now and hope that you can get one before they all sell out. It handles well with a lock that can stop the lens at 600 millimeters so you don't accidentally zoom back. While the focusing is a little slow for flying birds, if you're shooting small animals up close, the magnification at close range is great.
Coming in at number 3 is the Canon 800mm f11. It's $900. There's so many things to love about this lens. It's extremely light. It's 800 millimeters and it's very, very sharp. In fact, it's almost as sharp as the Nikon 600mm f4. That's a $13,000 lens. The autofocusing is fast and the image stabilization is also great, but it does come with some drawbacks. It's 800 millimeters, so it's the least versatile lens in the lineup. If you need to zoom back, it's really difficult to do. Also, the minimum focusing distance is about 20 feet, so if anything gets close to you, you won't be able to focus on it. It's an f11 lens, so it doesn't let in a lot of light. If you're not shooting in full sunlight, you're bound to get a lot of noise if you're using a fast shutter speed. Another thing is that you can only use it with the Canon R bodies, and we would recommend putting this lens only on the R5 or the R6, and that means you have to invest a lot of money in the body for an affordable lens. Still, I think this is an amazing setup. It's my go-to for wildlife, and I like it a lot. Coming in at number 2 is the Sony 200 to 600 f5.6 to 6.3. This lens is $2,000, so it's the most expensive lens that we're showing today. And it works great on the Sony A1, but that's also a $6,500 camera, so keep that in mind. The autofocusing works really quickly and accurately. Also, it's a very sharp lens. Another feature that I appreciate is it has an internal zoom, which I like when I'm trying to track my subject while zooming. It's not moving, it's not changing the balance of the lens, and it's not really changing how I handle the camera. That makes the process smoother when tracking wildlife. Some downsides, it's actually pretty heavy. It's one of the bulkier lenses, as you can see, and I can tell you from holding it, it's one of the heavier lenses as well. There's another bigger issue that we noticed with this lens, and that's when you have a subject that's up close and you get close to that subject, suddenly your 600 millimeters turns into about 350, and that's because of focus breathing. So imagine this scenario: you see a small animal, you work to get closer to it, you want a 600 millimeter shot very close. Well, that's not going to happen. It's actually going to be 350 millimeters. There is a way around that. You can use extension tubes, and that'll take away the focus breathing. But then think about that scenario: you have an extra piece of gear that you have to bring, that you have to stick on your lens. If you think that would be an issue for you, you might want to rule out this lens.
Watching this video back, I realized focus breathing requires a little more explanation, especially because it's an important trait of the 200 to 600. So let me introduce you to my little friend. Now I'm setting the Sony 200 to 600 all the way to 600 millimeters, and I'm going to switch the focusing to manual focus. I'm moving the focusing ring until it's focused as close as possible. And now I'm going to walk towards my subject until I am as close as I can possibly get. That's how big the subject is. Now, how do I know that this is not a true 600 millimeters? Well, I'm going to put on extension tubes. I'm being careful not to move from my spot. I'm standing in exactly the same spot. These extension tubes are hollow. They simply move the lens away from the camera. By the way, it's extremely hot today. Is that how you are? That's why I'm sweating so much. And again, lens is still at 600 millimeters, and I'm simply going to refocus on my subject. Look how much bigger it is in the frame, even though I did not move closer, nor did I zoom in. They're both at the exact same settings. This happens because as you move close to a subject, the optics of the lens have to move away from the body. Inexpensive extension tubes, they can be third party as long as they support autofocus, work great and can almost double your focal length on big telephoto zooms like this. Oh, how do I determine what the realistic focal length is? I look at the framing of the subject without the extension tubes, and then I zoom back. And in this case, I need to be at about 325 millimeters to get the subject the same size in the frame.
The focus breathing might not be an issue for you, and this is still the best option for Sony shooters with a budget of under $10,000, so still a great lens.
And the winner, the single best wildlife lens out of this huge competition, is the amazing Nikon 200 to 500 f/5.6 at only about $1,200. And it's not the sharpest lens in this list, but it did great. It's not the smallest or most compact lens, but it's good. It's simply the best all-around lens with amazing performance. Now, you can only attach it to a Nikon DSLR, but it's so good that when people come to me and they ask what wildlife camera they should get, I'll send them to a Nikon D7200 or Nikon D500 just so they can use this amazing lens. The autofocus is fantastic. For things like flying birds, it does not fall behind like those third-party lenses do. And it's simply an amazing value that produces better results than you might think for the $1,200 price tag. The Sony 200-600 is very close, but this one has better close focusing for those times when you want to get really close to small birds. Congratulations, Nikon, for winning the wildlife title once again. Chelsea, you're a Canon R5 shooter, so which lens are you picking?
I choose the Canon 800mm f/11. It's light, and that makes it easy to wield, easy to catch a lot of action. It's really sharp. Sure, it has those drawbacks of not being great in low light, but overall, it's my favorite lens to use.
And with my Sony Alpha 1, I'm going to be shooting with the Sony 200 to 600, at least till I can get a 600mm f4, because I love the versatility. It's not as light as that, but it's still fairly lightweight, and it's really sharp. Once again, thanks to our sponsor, KEH. Sell all the gear you're not using there. They'll turn it into cash and find a new home for it. And any new gear you're looking for, check there first. They have an amazing selection of newish and even older discontinued gear that you can still get amazing shots with. Thank you so much, KEH, for making this possible. If you have follow-up questions, write it down below. And of course, subscribe for more free reviews. We're going to be doing a follow-up review of camera bodies to tell you what you should put on your favorite lens.
Yes.
Now, if you don't yet have a camera good for wildlife photography, I'm going to recommend some bodies to pair with these lenses. But first, I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about the testing that we did, the methodology, and our own credentials for doing this test. I've been doing wildlife photography for 25 years. In that time, I've taken hundreds of thousands of photos. I've photographed and cataloged photos of more than 1,000 different species, including more than 100 different species of songbirds. Both Chelsea and I are fanatical about this. We've also worked closely with every single major camera and lens manufacturer so we can understand how to get the best results out of their equipment. On the flip side, we have never taken money or free gear from any camera or lens manufacturer, and we're one of the few outlets of this size that can say that. And we do that because our only priority is you, the consumer. If you appreciate that about us, please subscribe. Please check out our educational content at northrup.photo. Also, please use our links and coupons at our sponsors like KEH because it's their funding that makes these epic tests possible. We tested each of these lenses over the course of 2 weeks, though we have years of experience with some of the lenses. Chelsea and I both took turns at every lens, shooting in different scenarios, including close-up photos of birds near our bird feeder, birds in the field where we had to hike some distances, and flying birds in a variety of different conditions from sunny to overcast to after dark. We made a spreadsheet and ranked each lens in 10 different categories. That's over 200 rankings for 2 people and 10 lenses. We then boiled it down to what we thought were the key elements of each lens and presented that to you in this video. We recognize that other reviewers are going to come to different conclusions. I speak at length about this in a separate video called Technical Camera Reviews Are Hard. So before you complain, please check that out. In almost 10 years of YouTube, this video has been the hardest video to produce. We took and poured through over 10,000 photos with these lenses. But you know what? We loved every minute of it because we love wildlife photography and we really love helping people get the most bang for their buck. Now, if you don't yet have a body suitable for wildlife photography, I'm going to recommend camera and lens pairings at different price points that we believe will get you the most bang for your buck. I checked the prices at KEH. KEH gives you a 180-day warranty and a 21-day return period, so if you're not happy with it, there's no risk at all. And I'm gonna cheat by looking at my phone. At $1,300, the Canon 70D and the Sigma 150-600 Contemporary will produce amazing professional quality results. If you have a little more money, at $1,600, upgrade that body to the Canon 7D Mark II and continue to use the Sigma 150-600. If you have a few more bucks, at $2,000 for the combination, get the Canon 90D used if you can find it, and again, pair that with the Sigma 150-600 Contemporary. That 90D has 30 megapixels and an APS-C sensor, so it has a really high pixel density, and it means you won't have to crop as much or extracting as much detail as possible out of that. Now, if you have a few more bucks, we're gonna switch you to the Nikon system. At $2,400 and over, I would get the Nikon D7500 and pair that with the winner of this competition, the Nikon 200-500. If you can go for $2,900, get that Nikon 200-500, but pair it with the Nikon D500, an older DSLR body that still produces amazing, amazing results. If you have more budget, now I'm switching you to the Canon EOS RF system. The Canon EOS R5 with the Canon 800 f11 is Chelsea's camera combination of choice, and she can literally choose anything at any budget because we do this professionally. It is a proven system for lightweight photography, flying birds, things where you might be holding the camera up, and it's almost as sharp as a $13,000 lens. The autofocus on that combination is fantastic. If you have more money, it's kind of a slight edge here, but I prefer the Sony Alpha 1, a $6,500 body with the Sony 200-600 zoom. Now that body alone is $6,500, so you're looking at an $8,400 price point. But I think the combination is versatile and pretty amazing, and it's what I prefer myself. Please subscribe, give us a like, and maybe say something nice in the comments. Of course, if you have a question, write it down in the comments below too. Thank you.